Hi, Mary. This is Chris Meyer. Thank you for joining me today on my podcast. I'm a family law attorney for the greater Houston area. I mainly do divorces and domestic violence, but also a lot of other kinds of areas of family law. But yeah, go ahead and tell me about yourself. Tell who you are and why is divorce coaching important?
Great. Thanks so much, Chris, for having me on your podcast. Really appreciate it. Yes, my name is Mary Ann Hughes, and I'm a mom of two now young adult sons on opposite ends of the autism spectrum. And several years ago, I had to go through divorce. And it wasn't something I expected, but something I had to figure out how to navigate so I could best advocate for my kids and their current and future needs. And it took a whole lot of time, money, and effort to try to figure out the process, and I eventually did get a good result. I decided that other families shouldn't have to go through all the trouble I did trying to get there, so that's when I decided to start my company, Special Family Transitions, and I became a divorce coach to help families going through divorce who have children with different disabilities.
Okay, so I see you want to help other people not have to, I guess, so they can more easily navigate this complicated system and not have to experience what you experienced or pitfalls you saw that you, thank goodness, didn't fall into. So yeah, just tell us. How can you help them? What should they look out for? What's important? What's not important?
Sure. Yeah. So definitely I help them through the overwhelm, and it's so overwhelming going through divorce, but even more so when you've got one or more kids with disabilities trying to figure out what your life and their life is going to look like. So that is a big part of what I try to discuss and help my clients with, but also in terms of navigating, in terms of finding attorneys that understand this. There's not just a family law attorney, but then there's estate planning attorneys, there's special financial planners. There's all kinds of professionals that are important to work with or get connected with to look at all the different aspects that you have going on to plan for yourself and for your children in the future. Because, a lot of times people get divorced and they may get child support, which ends at 18. But in Texas, you can get indefinite child support, meaning lifelong, and a lot of people don't even know that. And so the child, once they turn 18, their needs are not going to just go away. So there has to be a way to address, whether it's through child support or through other ways that the parents can work together or decided for them, depending on how they go about it, in terms of how are the needs of that child going to be addressed going forward, and especially when they reach and become adults.
Okay. What do you, I guess, one thing I do as a family law attorney is I always push the message about the importance of co-parenting, and, parents need to share in the decision making, and, but it's especially like when it's like educational, medical, or dental decisions, or just when each parent gets to see the child. But how is it a little different when you have a special needs child?
Well, that's a great question. So when you have a special needs child, they may not do well with like a typical type arrangement.
Mm-hmm.
They may not do well with transitions, going back and forth with a typical type of schedule. And so you want to take that into account. So it depends on the child, but there's ways to prepare the child for whatever ends up happening that is going to be best for the family, both parents and the children. But you want to definitely look at who's been involved in making the decisions and who's been involved in the therapies and so on, because you want to get the other parent on board. So not that one parent is going to do all the work, but if you have been the primary caretaker, let's say, and the other parent does want to get more involvement, then definitely bring that other parent in to understand the disability. Maybe they haven't gone to therapies in the past. Maybe they haven't been as involved in the school. So I would say try to get the other parents, I don't want to say trained, but get them kind of on board so that when the child is with the other parent, that both parents feel comfortable knowing that they know how to take care of that child when they're in their care.
One thing I do is, as a family law attorney, is I deal with couples. They're maybe a mom and dad, maybe they're never married, but they had a child together, or they're married and they had a child together, and things don't work out, whatever. But now we have this. I understand there's certain things that led up to the dissolution of the marriage or the relationship, which we don't need to go into, that. But one thing that's interesting is that we still have, we have a mom and a dad, and we have a, beautiful child that needs parents who, cooperate and co-parent. And sometimes, those emotions tend to take over, and I sometimes have to refer to the Texas Family Code where it says that the parents may be required to take a parenting class, and it's up to the discretion of the judge. So I go to the judge's website, and they say, yeah, all parents have to take the class. I'm like, okay. Now, these parenting classes, it teaches them how to co-parent, like sharing the rights and duties, like educational, medical, and dental, and also custody. But I think when it's a special needs child, it kind of it changes everything. So, are there any special classes for to teach parents how to co-parent when the child has special needs, or special resources you can share with us?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and it's my hope that one day that will exist in terms of special needs co-parenting class, and maybe something I work on in the future. But for right now, definitely I do share resources that can provide some information on how to best support your child going through divorce. Back when I was getting divorced, there really wasn't a professional I could find that could help me because of the level of one of my children. I couldn't find a psychologist or professional who would be able to sit down with him because he's not really that verbal. And so I ended up creating what they call a social story, which basically is something that families with autism can use, and they use in schools in different settings, which helps the child know what to expect, prepares them for the transition, and does it in a friendly way that's at their level so they can kind of see what's happening and what to expect and to ease the transition going forward. So, for instance, in mine, I did it all in a very loving way, and definitely we don't want to talk negatively about the other parent, but I showed pictures of, where we live now, we all love you, but things are different in the house, and this is where dad's going to be, and you're going to be staying sometimes. And so they look for that information because they want to know really how the world is going to change. There's so much changing around them, but if you can give them some ideas to what that will look like, when, where, and so on, it makes it a little bit easier for them to cope with.
Okay. No, I think that's genius because, and I'm not educated on like special needs conditions. So, so explain to me why is it important to like an autistic child to show them like, okay, pictures. Okay, this is what's happening next, so there's no surprises. What happens? What's the like worst case, best case scenario if you prepare them or you don't prepare them? I mean, what can happen if you don't prepare the child at all?
Well, the worst case is you're going to have a tantrum, you're going to have aggression, you're going to have one child not physically want to leave the house or make a big fuss trying to get over there. And so the intent is that both parents want to spend quality time and make it a good experience for that child. But if the child is not prepared, a lot of kids with autism have a hard time with transitions and something new, especially when something that they're not familiar with, then it becomes a problem, and they have other issues, anxiety, and so on that can come into play. And so by preparing the child for divorce or the idea of divorce, so for instance, if a couple knows that things aren't working out and they're headed towards divorce, I would say don't let it be a big shock to that child, kind of help prepare them for that inevitable change in their life. So for instance, perhaps do it gradually. Maybe have the child kind of go to the other parent's house if they have another place to live and kind of spend maybe a few hours there as opposed to a whole weekend all at one time. That may be difficult to do. So hopefully, and I know it's hard, but we want to do this in as amicable a fashion as we can. And granted, not all divorces are like that, but look at it in terms of what's going to be best for that child, for them to adjust to their new environment and their new situation, and hopefully have a good relationship with both parents.
Have you seen situations where maybe one special needs child is, based on their current condition, they're fine doing overnights with the other parent? It's really not an issue. We don't need to monitor too closely. But then on the opposite end, maybe it's the child is, that we have to take a more, I guess, careful approach. I mean, because all I'm trying to say is every special needs child, everyone's unique, right? So we use the same rule for everybody, or how does?
Yeah, it's a great question. So there's a phrase in the autism world: if you've met one child with autism, you've met one child with autism. Everybody's so different.
Mm-hmm.
Their issues are different. Their challenges are different. Some may have issues with language. Some maybe with sensory issues. Some with behaviors, and a combination thereof. And so, so what may work for one, say for me, I've got, two different sons, and their needs are totally different, and how they approach a situation and respond is going to be totally different. But they both did benefit, though, from the preparation and taking it slowly and having the flexibility in terms of routine. So I would say have flexibility and be cognizant of the child's needs, and maybe, a typical schedule isn't going to work all the time. Or if you have an agreed to schedule, then maybe the child is sick or something happens, then maybe they stay with mom an extra day or dad or whatever it might be. So we don't want to force something that we might in another situation, and don't just hold it to the letter of the law or the decree that, this is my time and so on. Mm-hmm. We want to try to be as flexible as we can because, we don't know the kind of reactions we're going to get, whatever it might be. So, I think definitely, every child is different, and so we want to figure out what's going to be best for them. And what helps a lot, too, no matter what level they're at, is kind of knowing what the expectations are. So if you do have a schedule, maybe you have a visual schedule. People in the autism world use that as well, where you can have a calendar so they can see, okay, well, this is my time with mom and my time with dad, and that helps to reduce anxiety about, what's happening, where am I going today, and so on.
Okay, I know we only have a couple more minutes, and we could, the topic, oh my gosh, this could go on for hours or days. It's just such a large amount of information. But, so I'll kind of narrow it down really quick. But one thing I do as a divorce lawyer and custody lawyer is whenever a lawsuit's filed, we have to, if things are contested, like parents are not in agreement, then we have to go to mediation, right? It's just required. Mediation is a process to settle things out of court, but and hopefully come to an agreement, so we don't need to present these issues in front of a judge. But most mediations are pretty standard and cookie cutter. But why would it be important to have a mediator, an expert like you, handling a mediation concerning special needs kids? Why is your unique experience and knowledge, how is it a feature, like why at a mediation for special needs?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I'm in mediation training right now, so my hope is that in the future I can be involved in these cases, because what I've seen is that the typical cookie cutter, as you mentioned, mediation all times for my clients doesn't work. I help them as a coach, usually just one party, but I'm definitely happy to help with both to kind of look at the issues, because I think each person has a different perspective as to what the divorce should look like. But if you put the child first and understand what they're going to need now and in the future, I think you can get a much more successful mediation and hopefully avoid a prolonged legal process and battle, as a lot of times is the case. Because if one person may just not want to look at the future, say, okay, we'll deal with these things later. But if you start thinking about them, at least discuss them and have put things in a decree or your agreements, your MSA, to at least relook that, figure out maybe share expenses for those kinds of special needs requirements, I think that goes a long way to make things better for everybody involved.
Okay. Well, I do want to thank you for your time. I know our time is up, but thank you. Thank you for your time. I'd love to talk to you again sometime soon, and also let me know how the mediation training is going. And also any links or contact information you have, just I'm going to share that down in the article portion associated with this podcast. So if you have any links or resources you want to share with the listeners, just send that to me, and I'll incorporate it into the article so we can all have it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I just want to
And
mention
also,
I have a video on my YouTube channel. Everything's under
oh,
Special Family Transitions that talks about the social story and how to create one and how that can help your family. So if anybody's
okay,
going through that listening, then definitely
okay,
that's a free resource available to you
okay.
to check
What
that out.
I'll do is give me your YouTube link, and I'll share that too, and I'll encourage everyone to like and subscribe
Awesome.
to
Appreciate it. Thanks very
your
much.
YouTube. And yeah, no, I look forward to hopefully interview again in the future, and also talk about the special needs mediation, which sounds very, very. It's actually a really cool business idea, and trust me, there's a demand for that, and especially in
Yeah,
Houston.
because like you said, there's so many things, parenting plans, possession, what to do in the future that really we want to get these things at least on the table to people start thinking about them and hopefully find a way to make sure that everybody's needs are addressed, especially the child.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mary. That is our time. I really appreciate you coming onto the podcast and sharing your wealth of knowledge. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris.